LaCroix. Gotta have some LaCroix. So good. Best flavor, plain. Pure. What do they call it? I don't even know if they have. They don't even call it anything. Pure. Alright, let's write. Enough about LaCroix. They're not paying me. I'm just warming up here. Wanted to drop in and do a stream. Say hello. Hopefully some people can drop in live or watch later. Whatever your fancy is. Just warming up right now. There's been some good podcasts put out by the Calligraphy Masters Instagram channel. Especially, I would say, the Paul Antonio message. The Paul Antonio episode. That guy is so passionate about calligraphy. Like, about the letter forms, about the scripts, about the history, about the technique, the tools. Like, it's like, dude, like, man, it's inspiring just to hear him talk about how much he loves this shit. And then the other one that was really good is David Grimes. That dude's amazing. Like, such a great. I don't know, there's like a lot of calligraphers that are really good, but then there's those guys or gals that just take it to that artistic level, and it's just like, it's like, oh, you're an artist. Like, you're not just a calligrapher. Like, you're an artist. Like, and even more than that, like, you understand. Maybe not Paul so much, but definitely David. He understands production and like video and photography and really cool to hear. That dude works hard, or he did work hard, at least when he started out. I'm sure he does now too. But like, he was talking about how when he really went all in on calligraphy, and how he was just getting up super early and practicing every day, and I think he said like 4 or 6 hours a day he was practicing, or maybe just creating stuff. It's like, man, that's a lot. Like, I probably do an hour a day of some type of calligraphy, or now art, because I am getting into learning how to draw a day, and I feel like, I mean, that's a lot, and I know a lot of people don't have time for that. I mean, I kind of have a full-time job, kind of. I work from home. But you have other responsibilities. You know, I live in a house, I have a dog, and I have a fiance, and it's just hard to find. I mean, an hour is a lot. I feel like most people aren't doing an hour a day. So to do something like 4 or 6, I mean, yeah, you're going all in. And I think that's really what it takes. If you want to be, like, really good at this, you got to go all in. You have to want it really badly. And you have to want it, not everything that comes with it. You got to want. You got to love the script, the whatever you're learning. You got to love the practice of it, the artistry, producing the work. So yeah, check those out if you haven't yet. Calligraphy Masters. I think there's 4 episodes out. I'm sure they're all good. I'd definitely recommend the Paul Antonio episode and the David Grimes episode. An interesting thing that David Grimes brought up is that he's going to be doing a podcast with, one of my favorite penmen, which is Michael Gebhardt. And it sounds like that'll be coming out somewhat soon. I'm excited about that. Michael, I mean, just from listening to the podcast with David, he obviously thinks pretty critically about script, and I've talked a lot with Michael, and I know he does too. So I just am looking forward to their conversations and what the topics they want to cover, because it should be pretty enlightening. And it was good to hear David mention like a lot of the business pen guy. I know a lot of people here are interested in business penmanship, and he was shouting out Michael Gebhardt and Brian Shaboya and Marcus Carlini and Rate G. I mean, these are the guys that are really taking movement writing to that next level and producing some great stuff. So yeah, I mentioned I've been learning to draw and sketch a little bit. Just dipping my toes in that. I feel like it's something I really need to do because I want to develop my eye further, my ability to see things. And like you read a lot, it's kind of cliche, like that's what drawing and is all about, is like learning to see. It's like when you draw something, you learn to see it, and when you see something, you learn to draw it. It's kind of, I don't know, I've seen people talk about that. And that's just something I've never developed. I've never understood how drawing works, how sketching works. So I want to really get into that and see where it takes me. Kind of add that artist element that I just don't have. I mean, this business penmanship stuff it does not require you to be an artist. Like, you can be a very analytical, technical, even mathematical person and really, I think, excel at business penmanship. Like, I think it's more about performance and being, critical thinking than anything, as opposed to like creativity and art and design. Just warming up right now, obviously. I want to talk about the Connective Slant. Sorry, I plug in a bunch of stuff. I want to talk about the Connective Slant. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And, yeah, I want to talk about it. It's not mentioned in the books. I mean, it's mentioned as like, they'll say, oh, here's the Connective Slant, here's what it means. Here's a possible degree that you should use, or here's the degree we suggest of it. But they don't do any drills around the Connective Slant, which is a slant that's kind of on this angle here, as opposed to a main slant, which is more on this angle. So, what's up, Andre? Yeah, I've actually been using the drawbox.com. That seemed like that is the place to start. I mean, I'm sure there's other great ones too. But I'm going to go through that and see what I learn from that. I'm already learning a lot. And I'm doing everything with whole arm movement with the drawing. And that's another thing I want to work on, is really strengthening my shoulder muscles for writing and really dialing those muscles in. I feel like, I mean, in the draw box tutorials, he recommends doing everything with your arm. Sounds like off the table. Definitely not writing with your wrist or your fingers. So, definitely trying to strengthen my shoulder muscles. I think that'll help a lot with this business penmanship stuff. And with ornamental penmanship, and which is something that I'm interested in. Just having that level of control, because I think a lot of penmen, the problem is that upper arm control. It's a lot easier. This forearm, like that's this connective slant versus main slant thing. Like this connective slant, it's all forearm. All forearm. I mean, there's very little. There's a tiny bit of upper arm movement just to keep that line straight. But it's almost all forearm. I mean, if it was all forearm, it would be more like that. But to keep it straight on that connective slant, just needs a little bit of upper arm, but it's primarily forearm. And I can keep that line, I mean, I can go over that line really tightly. And I can do it, I can do it slower with control, as opposed to the main slant line, which requires more upper arm movement, a little bit of, it's predominantly upper arm movement, and it's just a little bit of forearm movement to keep it straight, or to keep that slant, the little bit of slant. I got to go a little faster to keep this straight, and it's just not as controlled. So kind of on a mission to also train my upper arm. So I feel like learning to draw, if I do everything with shoulder, kind of maybe hitting two birds with one stone, learning how to draw, and then also strengthening my shoulder, upper arm movement. So two things that I think are missing. And I definitely, I'm pretty confident that everybody kind of struggles with that upper arm movement, because, I mean, that's what's needed, for example, like an L shape. So if I'm just doing this top loop here, you're way up here, you're extended, and it's a lot of upper arm movement here in this top part of the loop. And I feel like a lot of people don't have a lot of control there. I wonder how easy it is to see this pen. Let me switch pens. If I have my other pen. Oh, there it is. Get a bolder line here. Most people seem to struggle with these loops. They're one of the hardest things. It's because they require that real strength of the upper arm at the top of that loop as you make that turn. So I'm just looking for ways to strengthen that, and I wonder if practicing a lot of whole arm movement is one way to increase that control when you take it to your forearm movement, to your muscular movement. Alright, but I'm not doing that today. But yeah, connective slant isn't talked about. I think I want to do a video about this just because it's not out there. Andrea asks, I've been thinking about arm movement and left-handers. I often get the problem of my left elbow ramming into the side of my body. Should I hold my arm further away or something? Lefties, I'm not sure, because you have a whole different angle system when you're working left-handed. So you're coming from this side, and you're trying to do this slant this way. So that's like pure upper arm movement with just a little bit of forearm to keep it straight. I mean, that's a lot of upper arm movement. And that's like me going like this with my right hand. And I'm not exactly sure how I would approach that. I might want to hold my arm closer to my body if I'm making that type of movement. So it might make sense for left-handers to keep their arm closer to their body when they're coming from this side. But you know the guy to talk to about that, Diego. Dual pen. I would send him a message on Instagram or hop in his Discord. I don't know if you're in his Discord. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about that there. I've definitely been experimenting with moving my arm further away from my body as a right-hander because it allows you to use more forearm movement in all your forms. It does restrict, I think, the downs. I'm trying to figure out what the downsides are of it. So the further you move your arm away, you can see, like, this is my arm, like, right up in my body. And you can see my arm's on this angle. And then if I move my forearm further away, it shifts the angle of the arm yesterday. I just read what you wrote. You joined yesterday. Great. You can see how the arm angle shifts. When you're this way, you can you can use forearm movement to do more of a vertical movement in the writing, which allows you to use that forearm control to do more vertical forms. So the theory is that, all right, you get more over this way, you can do, you can do an L with that forearm controlled movement. And you can also turn your paper more and more this way too. Now the extreme would be having my paper, this is perpendicular to the edge of my desk, and doing the forms like this. Now that's obviously, there's going to be some downsides to that. And I'm trying to figure out what those downsides are. I think it's maybe decreased writing zone is one of them. But I think it does help to, as a right-hander, to move that elbow further away from the body. A lot of the texts I've been looking at lately do subtly suggest that, and they do subtly suggest. So I have this is the line I'm writing on. Now some books will tell you want your forearm perpendicular to that line, and that in that sense gives you the biggest writing zone, because you can go from here all the way over to here, and basically like you start here and you end here. That's great. You have this whole writing zone. The problem with this is that it requires a lot of upper arm movement to make that work, to do even basic forms. And you have a tendency to slant your writing too much. Now, most books don't recommend that. A lot of books recommend that you want to tilt your paper to the right a little bit, so that your forearm is more perpendicular to this connective slant, which I want to talk about. So now here, my forearm is more perpendicular to this connective slant. So now I have this great range of motion like this over the connective slant. And all my forearm movement's right on that connective slant, which that makes sense to me. Like geometrically, anatomically, it seems like you'd want to line up something. You want to line up your arm to make a motion that is with one of the slant lines in the script. And your two slant lines are your main slant, your connective slant. So why wouldn't you line up your anatomy to be on that connective slant? Now you can do your left turn and your right turn, and everything's aligned in a way, geometrically, anatomically. Another thing to note is that I've been working with ellipses a lot and looking at this connective slant. Hopefully you can see this. Hopefully I can show it too. Let's say this is our connective slant, which is around 30 degrees, 28 to 30 degrees. Standard business penmanship. You have your left curve, which goes around this way, and you have your right curve, which goes around this way. Now you might think, oh, the left curve and the right curve are just symmetrical across this axis. So if this is the axis, you have the same. If you just flip this curve over to this side, they would match up, and they actually don't. Which is something that you would realize if you drew a whole ellipse. You'd have your left curve up here, and you have your right curve down here. And this is your axis here. And the way this ellipse works is because it's not a circle. So that you're going to have a sharper angle up here than you are down here. So it's going to be flatter down here and sharper up here, and then down here it's going to be sharper down here and then flatter over here. So these aren't actually symmetrical. You'd have to turn, if this is the A side and this is the B side down here, you'd have to flip this thing around so that it goes A, B, if that makes sense. You have to rotate this, and then it would match up on there. So when you're making your connective slant and doing your fundamental turns, this is going to look like this. And this is going to look like that. And that's a pretty bad job of drawing that. Try it again. Or like that. I kind of exaggerated it. So now you can see how it's relatively straight here, and then it curves up there, and then down here it's relatively curved, and then it gets straight. Still curving the whole way. I exaggerated it. But you can see how it's not symmetrical about the connective slant. Which leads us into another thing I wanted to talk about, which was the M and the N. Getting geared up to making a video about that to continue my review of the lowercase letters. Hopefully I didn't lose you here. My thing's spinning. I'll keep talking though. Talked about the I, which does use that right curve on the connective slant. Talked about the E, which also uses that right curve on the connective slant, but then it does some more complicated stuff on the way down. And now I want to talk about the M, which uses the left curve on the connective slant. Sorry, I'm just a little worried because this is loading. I'm not getting the stream. Hopefully people can still see. If not, hopefully it's being recorded. But I'm just going to keep going because I'm here to learn and hopefully share some things with you. So yeah, I think this is like where that connective slant, when you're doing the M, like it's all, you know, it's a great easy letter because it's all about connective and main slant. I mean, you literally have your connective slant here. You could draw the whole letter with connectives and main slants. And then you have your main slant, and you have your perpendicular connective slant, and then your main slant, perpendicular, parallel connective slant to the first one, another main slant, parallel to that line, another parallel connective slant here, and then your parallel main slant line, and then your exit, which is again parallel to the connective slant. So you can map out the geometry of this letter like really easily just by drawing lines that are on the connective slant and the main slant. Now obviously we don't want to write like that, so it's our job to gracefully go around these with curves. And I'll just do that with kind of a retrace. I don't know why I went under like that. That's not how you make the M. I'm making an X. Another over left turn, and another one down. Stop, go back. Comes out. Good to hear. Thanks, Andre. Could the same theory work for letters I, U, W? Yeah, absolutely. I works the same way. And the I is even simpler. Because it's just that connective slant, main slant, connective slant. So that's your I, where you go under, down on the main slant, and then you go out. Obviously, U works the same way. It just adds on. The I is the simplest letter in the script. You got it, Matt. X is the same lines here, except you go over and then under. So like that's why, I mean, these letters M, N, I, X, U, W, V to some extent. B is a little different because it has a different ending, I think. But they all have these. They all share this geometry, and this geometry is everywhere in the script because you find these forms everywhere in the script. I mean, even in your H, for example, you have your connective slant here, your main slant here, connective slant here, connective slant here. I'm still trying to figure out how this loop works at the top in regards to this connective slant, main slant stuff, but yeah, this stuff's everywhere. So that's why I want to talk about the connective slant. It's not mentioned anywhere in the books. It's just like, why? It's everywhere in the script. Wouldn't it be helpful to, drill or work on, making some nice turns around this slant? I don't know. Always experimenting, trying to figure stuff out. I'm going to get a little smaller here. Yeah, I mean, one of my theories is, Andre asked, maybe they assumed it would fall into place automatically. Maybe it would. It does for people, because I don't think a lot of people have thought about it. Maybe they have, and that's why they got so good. But because they think about everything, not just this one little thing. I wonder if they were just like, we need to worry about the main slant, because the main slant really does control the overall slant of the letters and the overall slant of the script. It's the dominant slant. So I think maybe they thought, like, all right, let's focus on that because that's what's going to produce maybe the fastest results. My other theory is that it's a lot easier, as I said before, to make a line on the connective slant. I think for most people, they just have a lot more control when they're doing this versus when they're doing this, because this is more complicated combination movement between the forearm and the upper arm. So I thought maybe they just thought, we don't need to worry about this connective slant. That's easy. When they're working on the main slant, they're going to be training those muscles, and the connective slant is going to be easy. So maybe it's just those two factors where they were just like, it doesn't need to be focused upon. But it's still important though, because it's not like, if your connective slants are off, I mean, your spacing is gonna be all screwed up. I mean, I think that's the big thing. If you don't have consistent connective slant, the spacing within your letter, within your words, between words, it's all gonna be screwed up. Shifted the paper over there. Yeah, I would imagine. So I'm just going to do a mirrored. For a mirrored, your main slant is going to be a movement like this. And then your connective slant is going to be like that. Yeah, this is way harder than going like this. So that makes a lot of sense. Connective slant is going to be a lot harder for you as a left-hander. And I think it's funny because you kind of see why they were so adamant about teaching people to write right-handed back then. Because they were teaching you to write in this way. And I don't think they had a clue on how to teach left-handers how to write like this. I mean, there's a few books that do show left-hander diagrams, which I'll actually grab. Since Andre's here and he's left-hander. Maybe this isn't the book. Darn. Oh, I don't want to go hunting through my books right now. So I'm not. Sorry. Teased you. But I forget what book it was. It's not a popular book. I just picked it up on eBay for like $10. It's an old copybook. But that was the first time I ever seen any diagram of left-handed writing. It's in with arm's reach here. Maybe it was this Creamer's one. No. Not that one. Oh. Yeah, here it is. The Rice System. So that was the first time I've ever seen a left-handed diagram. If I see anything that they're doing, it's they do seem to be really coming at it at an angle like this as opposed to like this. So it is I don't know, I'm sure you know of John DeCalbis. He's probably the most famous left-handed movement writing calligrapher. He doesn't do business penmanship stuff, but he does ornamental script, shaded Spencerian, Madarash script, and he does it with movement, and he's left-handed, and he uses an oblique pen. So that might be something you want to think about, is getting an oblique pen. And that might get you into a position where you can write with some control. Maybe you've already thought about that. Maybe you've already tried it. I don't know. Something to consider. And there's a reason he uses an oblique pen. It's because it gets his arm in a position where he can write with amazing, beautiful grace and control. So feeling warmed up now. Just thinking about connective slant here. Kind of draw these. See, I was a little short here, a little long there, just a little bit, a little long there. I'm the same way. I want to get it. I'm do want to get into more traditional calligraphy, ornamental penmanships particularly, and even some other stuff too, but even, you know, an oblique holder might be worth trying for you. Even just do business penmanship. I mean, there's people that do business penmanship with oblique holders anyway. I mean, I know Brian Shibuya, who can write beautiful practical penmanship. He uses an oblique holder for just about everything he does. So. Screen here. Spacing things out a little bit. It's another way to practice these connective slants is spread everything out. Then you can really see, you know, where things are longer and shorter. When everything's close together, it's kind of hard to see unless you have really good eyes. Where everything's shorter. So, you know, this one's a little longer than this one. That's a little longer than that. That's a little longer than that. So, you can really see the inconsistencies. Way to choke the G. That was terrible. Definitely move into more difficult combinations here. So like when you're just doing M's and I's and N's and U's, that's the easiest. M to E gets harder. And just tensen up a little bit. Take a deep breath, David. Find that confidence. Getting a little loose. Hate that. I like practicing like with spaced lines. I can't write over my writing and all that. Like, I want to create neat work, so I try to practice neat. Not rocket science. I want something that's spaced. I want to start on the same line here, end over here. Didn't do a great job of that, but like how you practice is how you're going to create art too. Now I wish I had something to write before I go here. Let's write. Where's that book? There's some good quotes in here. This is perfect. I love this quote. This is from Zaner Bloser Manual, Manual 96. Don't know why it's called Manual 96. There's 96 pages in this manual. That's one theory. But I have Manual 144, and that has 112 pages. So I don't know why it's called Manual 96 or why that one's called Manual 144. I don't know. This is a quote about muscular, well, the paragraph is titled Muscular Adjustment. And it says, "It is just as foolish to tension the muscles greatly to move a small object as it is to attempt to move a heavy one without tensioning them at all. Writing being a small art and the pen being a small implement, the muscles should not be tensioned tightly. To grip the pen tightly means that you cramp the muscles and thus prevent freedom and ease of action." Learn to hold the pen gently rather than to pinch it with a vice-like grip, and the muscles will act much more easily and gracefully. Okay. I don't know, it's just the way he wrote that. Zaner was this was actually after Zaner, so he probably had nothing to do with, well, yeah, he died in 1918. Who knows when this was written? This is a later edition. I think that was published in the 1920s or later, but it could have been copy that he wrote at some point. And I do have books written by Zaner that I love the way he writes verbally and obviously calligraphically too. It is just as foolish. All right. Don't like that I decided to write that on one line. Why is my F's always bigger than my L's? I guess they're just easier to make. If you make them really big, it is just as foolish to tension the muscles greatly. That was really bad. But we're going to keep moving. It is just as foolish to tension the muscles greatly to move a small object. Again, shouldn't have wrote on that line, or shouldn't have wrote that last word. Wonder if anybody can see this. YouTube is still being weird. As it is to attempt to move a heavy one. Figure out how to spell heavy. I don't know why. What's wrong with my internet or what? Yeah, I spelled heavy wrong. I'm an idiot. Without tension them at all. Bam. Alright. Sorry for the poor quality. I don't know why. YouTube's being weird. Or it's my internet connection. I don't know. Thanks for watching. I'm going to end on that. Hopefully you can see it. Should write a attribution. There's no author on this thing. It's just put out by the Zaner Bloser Company. Alright. I'm done. Thanks for chatting, Andre and Matt. Good to have you here. See you later.